It was October 17, a Tuesday. Rain had fallen all night, leaving the streets of Portland glistening like shattered glass. The air smelled of wet concrete, decaying leaves, and the kind of cold that seeps into your joints. Leo stood at his apartment window, a mug of coffee cooling in his hands. He hadn't slept. 6 months since the hospital. 6 months since the divorce papers were signed. 6 months of silence, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the echo of his own footsteps. His therapist called it adjustment. Leo called it drowning. He'd moved here for the quiet, a ground floor unit tucked behind an overgrown lilac hedge. But the quiet had teeth. It gnawed at him in the empty hours, reminding him of all he'd lost. His marriage, the future he'd thought was his. He measured time in laundry cycles and the slow creep of mildew on the bathroom tiles. That's when he heard it, the sound so small, it almost dissolved in the drizzle. Not a cry, but a question. Leo stepped onto the porch, the damp wood chilling his bare feet. And in a puddle beneath the rusted gutter was a creature the size of his palm. A kitten, soaked to the bone, its fur matted into dark spikes. It trembled, not from the cold alone, but from exhaustion, the kind that sinks into the marrow. What struck Leo wasn't its size, or even its desperation. It was the eyes. One blue, wide and unblinking. They held no fear, just a quiet, staggering weariness, like it had seen too much, too soon. A pink scar, thin as thread, cut across its nose. Leo knelt. The kitten didn't flinch, didn't hiss, just watched him, as if waiting for him to decide whether the world was kind or cruel. He scooped it up, wrapping it in the frayed flannel shirt he'd slept in. It weighed nothing. A heartbeat fluttered against his palm, fragile as a moth's wing. He carried it inside, dripping rainwater on the scuffed linoleum. In the kitchen, under the flickering fluorescent light, Leo saw the truth. Ribs pressed against paper-thin skin, paws raw, caked with mud. This kitten wasn't just lost. It was finished. Survival had scraped it hollow. He warmed milk, the way his grandmother taught him. So, low heat. The kitten lapped, too weak to lift its head, tongue flicking weakly at the spoon. Leo's throat tightened. He knew that hunger, the kind that eats you from the inside. He named it Ghost, not for its color, a muddy gray-white, but for the way it seemed to haunt the edges of the room. Silent, barely there. It didn't purr, didn't play, just curled into a tight ball. In the dusty corner behind the sofa, one mismatched eye always open, watching. For 3 days, Ghost existed like a shadow. Leo left out food, a cardboard box lined with an old sweater. He spoke softly, telling the empty room about the rain, the price of eggs, the ache in his left knee. Ghost listened, but never came closer. On the 4th night, Leo woke to a sound. Not a meow, the thump. He found Ghost in the kitchen, paws planted wide, standing over a sparrow. The bird lay on its side, wings splayed, breathing in shallow, panicked gasps. It must have flown down the chimney. Leo realized, trapped, terrified. Ghost wasn't attacking, wasn't stalking. The kitten stood, utterly, nose inches from the bird's heaving chest. It stretched out one paw and touched the sparrow's wing. Not a claw, just the soft pad of fur. A whisper of contact. The bird stilled, its black eye fixed on Ghost. For a heartbeat, The kitchen held its breath. Leo didn't move. He watched as Ghost nudged the sparrow toward a patch of moonlight on the floor, away from the cold stove, away from the shadows. The bird didn't struggle. It let itself be guided, as if it understood this tiny predator wasn't here to harm. Ghost looked up then and met Leo's gaze. Those mismatched eyes, blue and gold, held something new. Not weariness, purpose. Leo opened the window. Cool air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain. Ghost stepped back as the sparrow gathered its strength, fluttered once, and vanished into the night. Silence settled again, but it was different now. Softer. Ghost padded toward Leo, and for the first time, rubbed its scarred nose against his ankle. A silent acknowledgement. Leo sank to the floor, his back against the cabinets. Ghost climbed into his lap, a damp, bony weight. Curled there, shivering. Leo felt the vibration, a tiny tremor against his skin. He rested a hand on the kitten's spine, feeling the ridges of its ribs, the frantic drum of its heart. The wind sighed through the lilac hedge. Somewhat. A street lamp flickered out. Leo closed his eyes. He hadn't touched another living thing in months. Hadn't wanted to. But this broken creature, who'd saved a bird it could have killed, who carried its own invisible wounds, felt like a reflection. Ghost's breathing deepened, slowing into sleep. Leo stayed still, afraid to break the spell. In the dark, with this scrap of life trusting him, something shifted. Healed, not yet, but cracked open, like a seed in frozen ground, feeling the first faint promise of warmth. The rain returned the next morning, a steady, gray drumming on the roof. Leo woke, still on the kitchen floor, his neck stiff, his legs numb. But wait, warm and slight, pressed against his chest. Ghost, curled in the hollow beneath his collarbone, deep in sleep. The kitten's breathing was a soft puff of warmth against Leo's throat. Said it, unafraid. Leo didn't dare move. He watched the slow rise and fall of tiny ribs, the twitch of a ragged ear. This fragile trust, earned in the dark, felt like a miracle. And miracles, Leo knew, were terrifying. What if he broke it? He set up a proper bed that day, an old sweater in a cardboard box near the radiator. Ghost investigated, nose twitching, then promptly ignored it. The kitten chose a spot beneath the sagging armchair, a dusty cave where only one watchful eye was visible. Leo didn't force it. He understood the need for safe shadows. He placed a small dish of water and the warmed milk near the chair's edge. Ghost waited until Leo retreated to the kitchen sink, pretending to wash dishes, before creeping out to lap tentatively. The days settled into a fragile rhythm. Leo woke to the sound of rain, or the silence that followed it. You may call it the bitter aroma filling the small kitchen. Ghost would emerge, stretching bony limbs, yawning a silent pink crescent. The kitten would watch Leo, those mismatched eyes tracking his every move, from pouring cereal to staring blankly at the news. No purring, no rubbing. Observation, a silent sentinel. But small things began to shift, almost imperceptible. Leo started talking again. Not just about the weather or the news, but the deeper things, the things that festered in the quiet. He'd sit at the rickety table, coffee cooling, and speak to the space beneath the chair. The hospital called yesterday, he'd murmur, his voice rough with disuse. Just checking in. Like clockwork. They mean well. It's just a reminder, you know? The bed, the machines, the way the light was always too bright. He'd trace a scar on his own wrist, faded now, but a map of a different pain. She couldn't handle it, Ghost. The aftermath, the broken pieces. Who could blame her? He'd fall silent then, staring at the rain-streaked window. From beneath the chair, a soft blink, slow, deliberate, just once. One damp afternoon, Leo found himself kneeling, not reaching, just level with the dusty darkness. "What happened to you, little one?" he whispered. "Who gave you that scar?" Ghost stared back, unblinking. The pink line across the nose seemed to glow faintly in the gloom. The kitten didn't retreat, but held his gaze. It felt like an acknowledgement. "We both carry marks." Food became a ritual. Leo learned Ghost wouldn't touch cold food, or wet food straight from the can. It had to be warmed, just slightly, and placed on the chipped saucer, not the plastic bowl. The kitten would approach, sniff deeply, then eat with a startling ferocity, gulping down tiny bites, as if afraid it might vanish. Leo would sit cross-legged on the floor, a few feet away, eating his own meager sandwich. He found himself chewing slower, matching the kitten's pace, the silence between them growing less heavy. He learned ghost sounds, not meows, but subtle shifts in breath. A soft chuff of annoyance if Leo moved too suddenly. The tiny sigh, almost inaudible, when settling into sleep. The rasp of a tiny tongue grooming matted fur. A meticulous, time-consuming process. Leo watched, fascinated, as the kitten worked on a stubborn tangle near its shoulder, patiently licking, sometimes pausing with a look of profound frustration. He recognized that look. It mirrored his own battle with the unyielding knots of his life. One evening, a week after the sparrow, Leo sat on the worn sofa, trying to read a book he couldn't focus on. His mind drifted back to the hospital room, the sterile smell, the hollow echo of footsteps in the hallway, the crushing weight of failure pressing down. He closed his eyes, leaning his head back, a familiar ache spreading through his chest. A soft thump landed beside him. He opened his eyes. Ghost stood on the cushion, inches from his thigh. The kitten wasn't looking at him. It was staring intently at a loose thread on the sofa's arm. So, deliberately, Ghost extended a single claw. Not to scratch, but to touch. To hook the tiny loop of fabric. The kitten concentrated, ears slightly flattened, tail tip twitching. It was such a small, absorbing gesture. Such a cat thing. Leo found himself holding his breath, watching this tiny creature grapple with its insignificant problem. The absurdity, the sheer normalcy of it, pierced the heavy fog in his mind. A tiny, unexpected bubble of something almost like amusement rose in his throat. It felt foreign, like a muscle long and used. Ghost finally succeeded, pulling the thread free with a tiny, triumphant jerk of its head. It glanced up at Leo then, as if to say, "See?" Leo couldn't help it. A small sound escaped him. Not quite a laugh, but a release of breath. A softening. Ghost blinked. Slowly. It turned in a small circle, right there on the cushion, and settled down, curling its thin body into a comma. Not touching Leo, but close. So close he could feel the faint warmth radiating from its fur, and hear the soft, rhythmic rasp of its breathing. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with the patter of rain, the ticking of the old clock on the wall, and the quiet presence of another being, simply existing beside him. Leo picked up his book again. He still couldn't focus on the words. But this time, he didn't mind so much. He just sat. The warmth of the small body beside him a quiet anchor, listening to the rain and the soft sound of a kitten, finally, sleeping deeply. The breakthrough came on a Thursday. Sunlight filtered through the grimy window. Leo was attempting to tidy the apartment, a monumental task he'd been avoiding. He moved the armchair, sending dust motes dancing in the pale light. Felt startled, darted from its cave, his back arched, fur standing on end. It was a purely instinctive reaction, a tiny explosion of fear. Leo froze, dropping the dustpan with a clatter. "Whoa, easy," he murmured, hands held up, palms open. "Just me. Just moving the chair." Ghost stared at him, panting slightly, the gold and blue eyes wide with residual panic. So the fur on its spine began to lie flat. The hiss subsided into a low, uncertain rumble. Leo stayed perfectly still, crouched on the floor. He didn't reach out. He didn't speak. He just waited. Brief seconds stretched. The dust settled. The weak sunlight touched Ghost's ragged fur, turning it silver. The kitten took a hesitant step forward, then another, to stop inches from Leo's knee. It tilted its head, studying Leo's face. His open hands, painfully slowly, Ghost stretched out its neck and nudged Leo's knuckles with its scarred nose. A cold, damp touch. Testing. Leo didn't flinch. He held his breath. Ghost nudged again, a fraction harder. A sound, guttural, barely audible at first. A vibration, starting deep in the kitten's chest. It grew, filling the sunlit space between them. Purring. It was rough, like a tiny engine trying to start after years of disuse. But it was unmistakable. A rumble of tentative trust. A fragile bridge built over fear. Ghost pressed its forehead firmly against Leo's knuckles now, as if trying to burrow into the contact. The purr deepened, a warm, rhythmic thrum against Leo's skin. Leo felt it then, a physical sensation that traveled up his arm, settling somewhere behind his ribs. It wasn't joy. Not exactly. It was something quieter, deeper. The thawing, like ice cracking on a frozen pond, revealing dark, living water beneath. He slowly, so slowly, curled his fingers, just enough to cradle the small, bony skull against his hand. The purr intensified, a steady, comforting drone. Ghost closed its mismatched eyes. Leo stayed crouched on the dusty floor, sunlight warming his back, a broken kitten purring into his hand. He looked down at the small creature, at the scar across its nose, the ribs still too prominent, the trust so hard-won. He saw his own reflection in those closed eyes, his own scars, his own hunger, his own tentative reach toward connection. Tears pricked, hot and sudden, but they didn't fall. They just blurred the sunlight and the small, purring creature that had chosen, in this fragile moment, to lean into his touch. The chair remained unmoved. The dustpan lay forgotten. Nothing else mattered but this tiny, rumbling heartbeat against his skin. The purring didn't last, not like Leo hoped it would. It became a rare gift, a fleeting vibration in the dark, or when Ghost was half asleep, drowsing in a patch of weak afternoon sun. The kitten retreated to its watchful stillness. Leo told himself it was progress, slow progress, like his own tentative steps back into the world. He'd started taking short walks, just around the block, breathing air that wasn't recycled through his apartment's damp walls. He'd even bought cat toys, a fuzzy mouse, a crinkly ball, a feather on a stick. Ghost regarded them with polite disinterest, like artifacts from a civilization it didn't understand. Portland's constant companion returned with a vengeance. It drummed on the roof, a relentless, gray rhythm that seeped into Leo's bones. One evening, as he washed dishes, steam fogging the window, he heard it. A new sound. Not a mew, not a purr. Soft, persistent, thump thump thump, turn. Drying his hands on a towel, Ghost stood in the middle of the small living room, facing the brick fireplace. It was cold and used for years, the hearth filled with dusty decorative logs. The kitten's tail was low, its body taut, lifted a small front paw, and struck the bricks, just above the hearthstone. Thump, fizz, thump, fin. Not scratching wildly, but a deliberate, focused tap, like testing for a hollow spot. Ghost, Leo called softly. The kitten didn't turn. Its mismatched eyes, one blue, both, were fixed on the bricks. Intense, unblinking. Thump. Leo approached slowly. What is it, little one? You know. A few feet away, Ghost spared him a brief glance, a flicker of acknowledgement, then resumed its rhythmic tapping. Always the same spot. A grout line between two slightly darker bricks. A prickle of unease traced Leo's spine. It was just a cat, being odd. Cats did odd things, but this felt different, purposeful, haunted, like Ghost was trying to tell him something or remember something. The pink scar across its nose seemed to stand out more sharply in the dim light. He reached out, solid, to touch the bricks. Cold, rough, utterly solid. Ghost stopped tapping. It watched Leo's hand, then looked back at the spot, its small head tilting. A soft sound escaped it, not a meow, but a low, questioning chirp. It turned and padded silently back to its cave beneath the armchair, leaving Leo kneeling, hand pressed against cold brick, feeling foolish and strangely unsettled. The thumping became a ritual. Every night, around the same time, as the rain lashed the windows, Ghost would emerge, walk to the fireplace, and deliver its quiet, consistent thump, thump, thump against the bricks. 5 minutes. Never more. Never less. It would retreat. Leo tried everything. He blocked the hearth with a cardboard box. Ghost simply squeezed behind it and thumped the wall instead. He placed the fuzzy mouse near the spot. Ignored. He sat beside the fireplace himself, talking softly, trying to distract the kitten. Ghost would pause, look at him, then continue its rhythmic tapping, as if Leo were merely background noise. It started to wear on him, not just the sound, but the mystery of it. Thought. His own fragile peace began to fray. The silence between thumps felt heavier, charged with unanswered questions. He found himself staring at the fireplace during the day, tracing the grout lines with his eyes. Had something happened there? To Ghost? Before he found it? The scar, the weariness, the refusal to trust easily, it all pointed to a past steeped in pain. Was this spot a grave? A hiding place? A door slammed shut? The sleep, already fractured, grew worse. The thump, thump, thump echoed in his dreams. He'd wake gasping, heart pounding, back in the sterile hospital bed, the beep of machines morphing into the relentless tapping of small paws on brick. He'd stumble out to the living room, sometimes finding Ghost mid-thump, sometimes finding the space empty, the silence somehow louder. One rain-slicked afternoon, a letter arrived. Then, official, from the law firm handling the final dissolution of his marriage. One last signature, one last piece of paper to sever what was already broken. Leo left it unopened on the rickety table. Sat there, a white rectangle of finality, casting a long shadow. That night, the thumping felt different. Sharper, more frantic. Thump, thump, thump. Ghost wasn't just tapping, it was digging now. Claws scraping faintly against the brick. A low, frustrated growl rumbling in its tiny chest. Leo watched from the doorway, the unopened letter burning a hole in his periphery. A wave of helpless anger washed over him. The thump, at the letter, at the rain, at the whole damn broken mess of his life. Stop it! The words burst out, harsher than he intended. Like cracking ice. Ghost froze. Pole raised mid-strike. It turned its head. Slowly, those mismatched eyes wide. Not with fear, but with something else. Recognition? Understanding? The scar across its nose seemed to pulse. For a long moment, Kitten and man stared at each other across the shadowed room. The only sound was the drumming rain, and Leo's own ragged breathing. Something shifted in Ghost's posture. The tension bled away. The raised paw lowered, to the floor. The kitten didn't hiss, didn't run. It took a step, not towards its cave, but towards Leo. Another step. Its gaze never left his face. It stopped a foot away, sat down, and wrapped its thin tail neatly around its paws. This looked at him, not judging, not accusing, but seeing him, seeing the anger, the frustration, the raw, unhealed wound he carried. The fight drained out of Leo as suddenly as it had surged. Shame flooded in, hot and thick. He'd shouted at this tiny creature, this survivor, who carried its own silent burdens. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry, Ghost." The kitten blinked. Slowly. It did something extraordinary. It stood, walked the remaining distance to Leo's bare feet, and gently, deliberately, rubbed the side of its face against his ankle. The same spot it had touched that first night after the sparrow. A gesture of connection, of forgiveness, or simply acknowledgement. "I see your storm too." Leo sank to his knees, not crouching, but kneeling, fully. Ghost didn't retreat. It moved closer, circled once, and then, hesitantly, stepped onto Leo's thigh. Its tiny claws pricked through the thin fabric of his sweatpants. It settled, a small, warm weight, facing the fireplace, but leaning its bony flank against Leo's stomach. The thumping spot was still there, dark and silent in the gloom, but Ghost wasn't looking at it anymore. It was staring out at the rain-lashed window, its body a tense line against Leo. The purr didn't come, but the kitten stayed. Leo rested a trembling hand lightly on Ghost's back. He could feel the rapid flutter of its heart, the sharp ridges of its spine. He looked from the kitten to the unopened letter on the table, its white corner stark in the dim light. Two silent pressures, two unresolved weights. The thumping had stopped, but the tension hadn't dissolved. It had merely changed shape, settling deeper, binding the man and the cat together in a shared space of unspoken pain, and the fragile, terrifying possibility of facing it. The rain hammered down, a relentless percussion to their quiet vigil. What Ghost knew about those bricks? Leo realized with a chill. was a mystery as deep and potentially painful as the story sealed inside that unopened envelope. And neither of them was quite ready to turn the page. The rain didn't stop. It became the world. A gray, weeping shroud over Portland. Day bled into night, into day again, marked only by the creeping damp on the walls, and the heavy silence where the thumping used to be. Ghosts no longer visited the bricks, but the absence was louder. The kitten moved through the apartment like a shadow, quieter than before, returning to its watchful stillness beneath the armchair. Its gaze, when it met Leo's, held a new depth, a silent understanding that felt like a shared wound. Leo avoided the unopened letter. It sat on the table, a pale tombstone marking the grave of his old life. He avoided the fireplace too. The grout line between the darker bricks seemed to pulse, a silent accusation. He felt trapped, caught between two secrets he wasn't ready to face. His tentative walk ceased. The world outside the dripping windows felt too vast, too demanding. He existed in the limbo of his small rooms, with only the quiet ghost of a cat for company. 3 days after the shouting, the dam broke, not dramatically, like a stitch giving way under slow pressure. Leo woke before dawn. The rain had eased to a drizzle, a cold, whispering mist. He lay in the dark, listening to the ragged sound of his own breathing. The hospital. He was back in the hospital. The smell of antiseptic burned his nose. The glare of fluorescent lights stung his eyes. The crushing weight of the diagnosis pressed down. Chronic. Life-altering. Manageable, but he heard her voice. Sharp with fear, she tried to mask as practicality. Leo, I just can't live waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's not the life I signed up for. The sound of a suitcase zipper. Final. Deafening. He sat bolt upright, gasping, sweat chilling his skin. The apartment was dark, silent, but the echo of the zipper, the sterile smell, clung to him. Panic, cold and familiar, clawed its way up his throat. He needed air. Real air. Not this damp tomb. He stumbled out of bed, bare feet hitting the cold floor. He needed to get out. He fumbled for a jacket, keys rattling in his trembling hand. He didn't think about ghost, about the letter, about the rain. He just needed to move, to outrun the ghosts in his head. Jacket half on. Fuse clenched. He saw it. Ghost. Not under the chair. The kitten sat directly in front of the apartment door, blocking his path, utterly still, its mismatched eyes reflecting the faint streetlight filtering through the window, fixed on him. Not pleading, not fearful, resolute. Move, ghost, Leo rasped, his voice thick with panic. I need to get out. He took a step forward. Ghost didn't budge. Not an inch. It lowered its head slightly, warning growl vibrating in its tiny chest. A sound Leo had never heard before. Not anger. Protection. You are not leaving like this. Move. Leo's voice cracked, edging towards hysteria. He took another step, reaching down instinctively to nudge the kitten aside. Ghost didn't flinch. It didn't swipe or hiss. It did something utterly unexpected. It darted, not away, but past him, a streak of damp gray fur in the gloom, straight to the fireplace. And before Leo could react, before he could even process the movement, Ghost reared up on its hind legs, placed both small front paws against the specific grout line, and pushed. Not a tap, not a thump, a desperate shove. Silence. A sound, faint, gritty, a tiny cascade of dust, like dry sand falling, from the exact spot Ghost had been thumping for nights on end. A single brick, slightly darker than the others, had shifted, just a fraction, less than a quarter inch, but it had moved. Leo froze. The panic, the desperate need to flee, snapped like a taut wire. She stood, disbelieving, at the brick, at the small puff of dust settling on the hearthstone. Post, who had dropped back to all fours, panting slightly, its entire body trembling, but its eyes fixed fiercely on Leo. Look where it hurts. The keys slipped from Leo's hand, clattering on the linoleum. The sound was startlingly loud in the stillness. He didn't pick them up. He was solid, like moving through deep water, towards the fireplace. Ghost didn't move out of his way, just stood its ground, a tiny sentinel before the revealed secret. Leo knelt. The cold from the bricks seeped through his sweatpants. He reached out, his fingers trembling, and touched the shifted brick. Felt loose, not mortared solid like the others. He hooked his fingertips into the narrow gap Ghost had created, took a breath, and pulled. It didn't come easily. Years of pain, grime, and neglect held it fast. He pulled harder, gritting his teeth. A shower of dust and crumbling mortar rained down. Ghost sneezed, a tiny but didn't retreat. Its gaze was locked on the widening gap. With a final gritty scrape, the brick came free. Leo held it, pulled, in his hands. Behind it, in the dark cavity of the old fireplace flue, wasn't emptiness. Nestled in the soot and dust was a small, sodden bundle of gray and white fur. Motionless. Leo's breath caught. Another kitten? But no. As his eyes adjusted, he saw the delicate shape of a wing, tattered and stiff, the curve of a tiny beak. A sparrow, long dead, preserved by the dry, enclosed space, lay curled, as if sleep, small, tragic monument. Understanding crashed over Leo. A cold wave. Ghost hadn't been thumping randomly, hadn't been driven by some feline obsession. It had known. Somehow, it had known this was here. This tiny grave in the wall. The scar across its nose. The weariness in its bones. The fierce protectiveness. It all clicked into place with terrible clarity. This dead bird, hidden behind brick, was Ghost's ghost. Its loss. Its silent burden. Just like Leo's unopened letter. A sob tore from Leo's throat. Uncontrolled. Not just for the dead bird, or for Ghost's hidden pain. For everything. The hospital bed. The zipper sound. The crushing loneliness. The letter on the table, waiting to confirm his abandonment. The weight of it all, the years of holding it in, collapsed upon him. He slumped forward, forehead resting against the cold bricks beside the open cavity. The dead sparrow a blur of gray in his tear-filled vision. Great, shuddering sobs racked his body. He cried for the life he lost, for the fear he carried, for the tiny creature who'd carried its own secret grief, tapping endlessly at a wall it couldn't breach alone. A small pressure against his heaving side. Leo lifted his head, blinking through tears. Ghost had climbed onto his bent knee. The kitten wasn't looking at the cavity, or the bird. It was looking at him. Those mismatched eyes, blue and gold, held no judgment, no pity, only a deep understanding. I know this storm. So deliberately, Ghost leaned forward, stretched its neck, and pressed its scarred nose, cold and damp, against the tear track on Leo's cheek. A touch so soft, so deliberate, it stole his breath, a mirror of that first tentative nudge against his ankle. But now, it wasn't a question. It was an answer, a bridge built from shared sorrow. Leo reached up his handshake and cupped the small, bony body against his chest. Ghost didn't resist. It curled into the hollow, its tiny head tucked under Leo's chin. He could feel the frantic flutter of its heart, a wild bird trapped against his skin. Or maybe it was his own. He held the kitten, rocking slightly, his tears dampening its fur, his breath ruffling its ears. He held it, and the dead sparrow watched from its dark recess, a silent witness to the breaking and the fragile beginning of something else. The rain whispered against the window. The first faint light of dawn began to bleed through the clouds, turning the room from black to deepest gray. Leo knelt by the open wound in the wall, holding the living warmth of the kitten who had led him there, and finally, let the storm inside him rage, and then begin to subside. The brick was out. The secret was seen. The tears were falling, and in the raw, open space of his grief, a tiny, scarred creature purred, a rough, rumbling counterpoint to his sobs, not fixing anything, but bearing witness. You are not alone. The rain didn't stop, but it softened. The relentless drumming eased into a gentle sigh against the windows, a quiet weeping rather than a howl. Dawn's pale light, weak but persistent, crept across the scuffed linoleum, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, the jagged hole in the fireplace bricks, and the two figures huddled before it. Exhaustion weighing him down like wet sand. His face was raw. Salt tracks dried on his cheeks. His throat felt scraped hollow. But the crushing pressure in his chest, the panic that had sent him lunging for the door, had receded, not gone. Drained. For now. Ghost lay curled in the cradle of his arms, a small, warm weight pressed against his thudding heart. The kitten wasn't purring. His breathing was deep, so the trembling finally subsided. Its mismatched eyes were half closed, but Leo felt its awareness, a quiet vigilance. They stayed like that, kneeling on the cold floor, the dead sparrow a silent presence in the dark cavity beside them. The world outside seemed impossibly distant. There was only this, the aftermath of the storm, and the fragile calm it left behind. Leo didn't move the sparrow. Not immediately. Sacrilegious. Like disturbing a grave. Ghost seemed to share the sentiment. When Leo finally shifted to sit back on his heels, the kitten slipped from his arms. But instead of retreating, it sat beside the open cavity, its gaze fixed on the small bundle of feathers within. No thumping, no chirping. Watching. A quiet vigil. Leo understood. He left the brick on the hearthstone, a dark, gritty monument. He left the letter on the table too. One ghost at a time. The day unfolded with a strange, new rhythm. Leo moved slowly, his body heavy with spent emotion, but his mind strangely clear, like fog lifting, revealing a landscape scarred, but visible. He cleaned the dust and mortar debris from the hearth, careful not to disturb the cavity. He made the familiar ritual grounding him. Ghost followed him, not closely, but within sight. From the kitchen doorway, it watched him pour boiling water. From the edge of the living room rug, it observed him sweep. Its usual hiding spot beneath the armchair remained empty. It was as if the shared breaking, the raw exposure, had dissolved some invisible barrier. Ghost wasn't clinging. But it wasn't hiding either. It was present. Leo found himself talking again. Softly. To the room. To himself. I should do something, he murmured, staring at the cavity. For the bird. It shouldn't stay there. Ghost blinked slowly from its perch on the rug. Maybe bury it? Under the lilac bush? The kitten's tail tip twitched. Agreement? Or just a flicker of thought? Leo took it as the former. He found a small, sturdy cardboard box, lined it with a soft scrap of flannel, the same pattern as the shirt he'd first wrapped Ghost in. He approached the fireplace slowly, kneeling again. Okay, he breathed. Ghost watched, utterly still. Leo reached into the dark cavity. The air inside was cold, smelling of ancient soot and dust. His fingers brushed the stiff, fragile feathers. He lifted the tiny body, cradling it with impossible gentleness in his palm. It weighed nothing. A husk. A memory. He placed it in the flannel-lined box. Ghost moved then. It padded silently to Leo's side, stretched its neck, and sniffed the edge of the box. Deep inhale. Its eyes closed briefly. It stepped back. Its gaze lifted to Leo's face. There was no distress, only a profound, quiet acceptance. It's time. Leo closed the box flaps. Not sealed, just folded. He carried it to the small porch. The rain had nearly stopped. Just a fine mist hanging in the air. The world smelled sharply green, washed clean. Ghost followed, sitting just inside the threshold, watching as Leo stepped into the damp morning. The lilac bush, overgrown and tangled, glistened with raindrops. Its leaves were starting to yellow, but it still held a sense of shelter. Leo found a spot near its base, where the earth was soft. He dug a small hole with his hands, the cold mud coating his fingers. He placed the box inside, covered it gently. He didn't say words. He didn't know any that felt right. He just pressed the damp earth down, marking the spot with a smooth, rain-washed stone. When he stood, chilled and muddy, he saw Ghost sitting perfectly still in the doorway, those mismatched eyes fixed on the freshly turned earth beneath the lilac. A silent farewell. The kitten turned and padded back inside. Leo followed. Back in the apartment, the hole in the fireplace gaped. A wound in the wall. Leo looked at it, then at the discarded brick. He couldn't just shove it back. Not now. Not after what it had concealed and revealed. He filled the kettle again, made more tea. Ghost hopped onto the rickety table, delicately avoiding the unopened letter, and said, watching Leo with an unnerving stillness. Leo sipped his tea, the warmth spreading through his chilled bones. His gaze drifted from the hole to the letter, and finally, to Ghost. 2 secrets, he said softly. The kitten blinked. Slowly. He picked up the envelope. It felt heavier than it should. Thin paper, thick with finality. He traced the embossed logo of the law firm. His hands didn't shake. Not anymore. The panic, the desperate flight instinct, had bled out onto the hearthstones with his tears. What remained was a dull ache, and a strange, terrible clarity. He opened it. The sound of tearing paper was loud in the quiet apartment. He pulled out the single sheet. The language was sterile. Legal. Dissolution of marriage, final decree, division of assets finalized, no further obligations. His eyes skimmed the lines, not really reading the details. He already knew them. He reached the bottom. Her signature. Familiar. A looping, confident scrawl he'd seen on grocery lists. The The mortgage papers for a house that wasn't his anymore. And beside it, a blank line, waiting for his name. Leo set the paper down. He didn't pick up a pen. Not yet. He looked at Ghost. The kitten was cleaning a front paw with meticulous focus, as if the fate of legal documents held no interest. But Leo knew better. This small creature, who'd unearthed its own buried grief, had given him the courage to face his. Signing wasn't about her anymore. It was about him, closing a door so another might open. He picked up the pen. The plastic felt cold and impersonal. He positioned the tip over the blank line. For a moment, he hesitated, not out of doubt, but out of respect, for the life that was, for the pain of its ending, for the person he'd been, and the person he was becoming, kneeling on a cold floor, with a scarred kitten as his witness. He signed, Leo Brennan. The letters flowed, firmer than he expected. Final. He set the pen down. The sound was a tiny click, like a key turning in a lock. Ghost stopped grooming. It looked up at him. Its mismatched eyes, blue and gold, seemed to hold a new depth. Understanding? Or simply acknowledgement of the shift in the air. The kitten stretched, the luxurious arch of its bony spine, then hopped down from the table, not to its corner, but to the hole in the fireplace. It sat before it, gazing into the dark cavity for a long moment. It turned its back on it, deliberately. It walked to the cardboard box near the radiator, the one lined with the old sweater, the bed it had always ignored. It sniffed it, circled once, and then, with a soft sigh, curled up inside. Gray ball, but visible, present, choosing the offered warmth. Leo picked up the signed paper. He folded it, slid it back into the envelope. He'd mail it tomorrow. He looked at the hole in the wall. He'd fix that tomorrow too. Not by hiding the brick back, but maybe by cleaning the cavity and leaving it open. A reminder, or perhaps filling it with something new, something light. He sat at the table, finishing his tea. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful, fragile, but real. He could hear the soft rasp of Ghost's breathing from the box, the gentle patter of the last raindrops on the roof, the distant sigh of a car on the wet street. The world outside, once too sharp, too loud, manageable. He looked at the kitten, sleeping in the open. He looked at the sealed envelope. He looked at the stone-marked earth beneath the lilac bush, visible through the window. Life hadn't magically mended. The ache was still there, a familiar throb beneath his ribs. The future was still uncertain. But the walls, both literal and invisible, felt less like a prison, like a space he inhabited, with a small, scarred creature who had shown him that even the deepest wounds could be witnessed, and perhaps allowed to rest. The thumping had stopped. The letter was signed. The sparrow was buried. And in the quiet aftermath, a tiny heartbeat breathed steadily near a radiator, and a man sat at his table, not drowning, but finally finding his footing on the shore. Sunlight, actual, sustained sunlight. It flooded Leo's small apartment, warming the scuffed linoleum, chasing the lingering damp from the corners. It felt like a benediction. After weeks of gray, Leo stood at the window, steaming mug in hand, watching dust motes dance in the golden beams. Curled in the now familiar sweater-lined box, luxurious arch of its spine, one mismatched eye opening to a slit. The radiator hummed softly beneath it. Life hadn't become perfect, The hole in the fireplace was still there, a dark rectangle Leo hadn't yet decided how to fill. The memory of the sparrow and the signed divorce papers sat quietly in the background, but the frantic edge, the suffocating weight, had lifted, replaced by a quiet rhythm, a tentative peace. Ghost was its heartbeat. The kitten's transformation wasn't dramatic. It wasn't suddenly playful or cuddly, but the stillness felt different. Less like hiding, contentment. It explored more. It claimed the windowsill, basking in the weak autumn sun, watching the world outside with calm curiosity. It still flinched at loud noises, still retreated sometimes, but it always returned. To the radiator box, to Leo's side during meals, to the foot of his bed at night. Small, warm weight against his ankles. When it came, was less an engine struggling to start, and more a steady, comforting hum. Leo found himself changing too. He fixed the dripping faucet. He scrubbed the mildew from the bathroom tiles. He started walking again, not just around the block, but further, to the small park down the street. He carried Ghost sometimes, tucked into the front of his jacket, the kitten's head poking out, wide eyes taking in the rustling leaves, the distant bark of a dog, the scent of damp earth and decaying apples. Ghost never struggled, just watched, and occasionally rubbed its scarred nose against Leo's chin. A silent okay. One crisp October morning, the air sharp with the promise of frost, Leo noticed Ghost behaving strangely, not fearful, but intensely focused. The kitten sat by the back door, leading to the tiny concrete patio and the overgrown lilac bush. It wasn't meowing to go out. It was just staring intently at the door. Its tail tip twitched, a metronome of concentration. "What is it, little shadow?" Leo asked, kneeling beside it. Ghost glanced at him, then back at the door. Blow. Soft chirp escaped it, not the questioning chirp from before the fireplace. The sounded urgent, concerned, curious. Leo opened the door. Ghost darted out, not to explore, but straight to the base of the lilac bush, to the spot where the small stone marked the sparrow's grave. Leo followed, a prickle of unease touching his neck. Had something disturbed it? Ghost didn't go to the stone. It pushed its way into the dense tangle of branches and yellowing leaves, deeper than Leo had ever seen it go. He heard rustling, a soft scrabbling sound. Panic cheap. Leo's breath caught. Not again. He gently parted the branches, peering into the dim, earthy space beneath the bush. Ghost was there, crouched low. But it wasn't stalking. It wasn't threatening. In front of it, huddled in a shallow depression lined with dead grass, was a fledgling sparrow. Scarcely feathered, its wings useless nubs. It trembled violently, its beak gaping in silent terror at the large creature looming over it. Ghost wasn't looming, it was guarding. Its body was positioned between the fledgling and the open patio, a barrier against the wider world. Its head was lowered, not in a predatory stance, but in a posture of intense, protective focus. It made that soft chirping sound again, low and rhythmic. Soothing? Warning? Leo couldn't tell. Just stood, disbelieving. How long had Ghost been doing this? Coming out here, slipping into this hidden space, watching over this fallen chick? Had it found it after the burial? Had it sensed life struggling here, beneath the bush where it had laid its own ghost to rest? Ghost, Leo breathed. The kitten glanced back at him, its mismatched eyes holding a fierce intensity. Quiet, It scared. Leo understood. He didn't reach in. He didn't try to rescue. He simply knelt in the damp grass, outside the lilac's embrace, and watched. Ghost turned its attention back to the fledgling. It didn't touch it, didn't nudge it. This said, the silent, furry sentinel. Its presence, strangely, seemed to calm the tiny bird. The frantic trembling eased. Its beak closed, its dark eye, still wide with fear, fixed on the steady gaze of the creature that should have been its end. Minutes passed. The weak sun climbed higher, dappling the ground with light. Leo heard the distant call of an adult sparrow. Frantic, searching, the fledgling stirred, lifting its head weakly, answering with a faint peep. Ghost didn't move. It remained, utterly a quiet fortress. Only the slow rise and fall of its bony flanks betrayed its life. Leo felt a lump rise in his throat. This wasn't instinct. This was choice. A conscious act of guardianship, born from a place of profound understanding. Ghost knew loss, knew terror, knew the fragility of life huddled in the dark. And here, in the shadow of its own grief, it had chosen to stand guard, to offer the protection it had never received, to a creature just as vulnerable as it had been. The adult sparrow's calls grew closer, frantic circles above the lilac bush. Ghost tilted its head, listening. Slowly, deliberately, it shifted, not away, but sideways, creating a narrow gap in its protective barrier, a clear path from the fledgling's nest towards the sound of its parent. It chirped again, softly, encouragingly. The fledgling seemed to gather its strength. It wobbled, took a hesitant hop, then another. It stumbled through the gap Ghost had made, out into the patch of sunlight on the patio. The adult sparrow swooped down, landing beside it in a flurry of wings and anxious chirps. It nudged the fledgling, urging it towards the deeper shelter of a nearby hydrangea bush. Ghost watched them go. Its body relaxed, the fierce tension draining away. It didn't follow. It just sat. In the dimness beneath the lilac, its gaze fixed on the spot where the fledgling had been. It turned its head and looked directly at Leo. Those eyes, blue and gold, held no pride, no expectation, just a quiet weariness, and something else, a softness, a peace. Leo reached out, slowly, and Ghost emerged from the bush. It walked to him, not with its usual cautious gait, but with a deliberate stride. It pressed its entire body against his knee, rubbing its scarred face along his jeans, a full-bodied sigh escaping it. Leo scooped it up, cradling the small, warm weight against his chest. He felt the rumble start deep within Ghost, a purr not of drowsiness, but of deep contentment. He looked down at the small creature, at the pink line across its nose, a testament to a past he'd never fully know. He looked at the lilac bush, the stone marker, the spot where life, against all odds, had been guarded and set free. The gift wasn't just the fledgling's survival. It was the revelation of Ghost's hidden heart, the quiet, fierce loyalty that had driven it to thump at a wall, and then to stand guard over a stranger's chick. It was the proof that healing wasn't just about mending your own broken pieces, but about recognizing the breaks in others and offering shelter. Ghost hadn't just saved a bird that first night, or guarded this fledgling. It had shown Leo, in the most visceral way possible, that the capacity for care, for fierce, protective love, could bloom even in the most scarred and barren soil. That his own heart, bruised and wary, wasn't beyond repair. It was simply waiting for the right thing to guard. Leo held Ghost tighter, feeling the purr vibrate through his own bones. He looked out at the garden, where the adult sparrow was still fussing over its chick in the hydrangea. Fragile, persistent. He looked down at the small, purring guardian in his arms. A final piece of the puzzle clicked into place, not with a thump, but with the soft, resonant hum of a healing heart. He buried his face in Ghost's fur, inhaling the scent of warm dust, sunlight, and something indefinably sweet, like lilacs, remembered. Later, sitting at the rickety table with Ghost drowsing in the sunbeam on his lap, Leo opened a notebook he hadn't touched in years. Not a journal for pain, but for something else. He picked up a pen, and for the first time since everything shattered, he wrote words not about what was lost, but about what was found. October 29th, sunny, cold. Ghost showed me today, we don't heal in the light. We heal in the shadows we choose to guard. He looked down at the sleeping kitten, the sunlight turning its ragged fur to spun silver. The purr was a steady anchor in the quiet room. The hole in the fireplace, the unopened envelope now mailed, the stone beneath the lilac, they were still there, but they were no longer wounds. They were landmarks, proof of survival. And the small creature sleeping on his lap, with its mismatched eyes and scarred nose, was the map. Winter came softly to Portland, a blanket of silver frost on the lilac branches, and a new kind of quiet in Leo's small apartment. Not the hollow silence of before, but a peaceful hush, like the world holding its breath after a long storm. The hole in the fireplace remained open. Leo had cleaned it out, brushing away decades of soot and regret, until the old brick cavity breathed clean air. He'd placed a single white candle inside, a sentinel for the past, witness to what was buried and what was set free. Ghost approved. The kitten would sit before it sometimes, its mismatched eyes reflecting the pale winter light that fell through the cavity's depth, a silent communion with what was lost and what remained. The fledgling sparrow grew stronger. Leo and Ghost watched from the window as it took clumsy hops beneath the hydrangea, its parents a frantic, loving escort. One morning, a brittle, bright day in early December, it flew. Not far, just a few feet from one branch to another, but it flew, perched on the windowsill, let out a soft, trilling sound Leo had never heard before. Not a chirp, a warble, like a bird's song filtered through a tiny, purring throat. A benediction. Leo felt it then, not as a sudden epiphany, but as a slow, deep knowing that had been settling into his bones for weeks. Like silt finding its level in still water. Healing wasn't a destination. It wasn't the absence of scars, or the forgetting of pain. It was this. A scarred kitten watching a bird it had guarded take flight. A man who'd once drowned in silence, now hearing the fragile beauty in a sparrow's first song. It was the choice, again and again, to turn towards the light, even when you carried the cold of the cellar within you. Ghost hadn't saved him. Ghost had seen him. In his brokenness, his fear, his grief-thick isolation, the kitten had looked at him and recognized a fellow traveler in the shadows. And in that recognition, in the simple, fierce act of witnessing, it had handed Leo a map back to himself. Their days unfolded, woven with small, sacred threads. Morning sunlight on the radiator box, where Ghost now slept openly, a soft gray comma against faded wool. The ritual of warming Ghost's milk. Just so. The shared silence over breakfast. Leo with his toast. Ghost delicately nibbling kibble from the chipped saucer. The walks to the park. Ghost a warm weight against Leo's chest. Tiny nose twitching at the scent of frozen earth and distant evergreens. And the purring. The purring. It had become Ghost's true voice. A low, rumbling current of contentment that flowed through the apartment. A vibration Leo felt in his own chest when the kitten curled against him at night. It wasn't constant. Ghost still startled at slammed car doors. Still hid under the bed during thunderstorms. The scar across its nose, a pale pink line now, would always be there, just like Leo's own invisible marks. But the fear, the bone-deep weariness that had defined them both, had receded, replaced by a quiet resilience, forged in the shared breaking, and the tender, stubborn act of putting one paw, one foot, in front of the other. Leo started volunteering, just a few hours a week, at the no-kill shelter down the street. He didn't work with the cats. Not directly. He cleaned kennels, filled water bowls, mended fences in the small outdoor run. But sometimes, a pair of wary eyes would watch him from the back of a cage. A small creature hunched in on itself, radiating a despair he knew intimately. Leo would sit, a respectful distance away, and talk. Not coaxing, not promising, but bearing witness. Telling the silent cat about the rain, the price of eggs, the ache in his left knee that always flared before snow. He learned their language. The flick of an ear, the slow blink, the hesitant stretch of a paw. Like Ghost had taught him, that trust couldn't be rushed. It arrived in its own time, a fragile gift offered in the stillness. He saw Ghost's lessons reflected in every wary feline face. The need for patience, the power of quiet presence, the understanding that some wounds are too deep for words, but never too deep for the gentle pressure of companionship. One bitter afternoon, sleet rattling against the shelter windows, a young woman came in. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands trembling as she held a battered carrier. Huddled on a stained towel, was a kitten, maybe 3 months old, with patches of fur missing, and one leg held at an unnatural angle. Eyes, wide and terrified, held a shattered look Leo recognized. The woman choked back a sob. I found him under the dumpster behind my work. He was trying to drag himself away from a bigger cat. I couldn't leave him, but I can't afford. Her voice broke. The shelter manager moved forward, kind but professional. Leo stood frozen, watching the tiny, broken creature shiver in the carrier. He saw Ghost, soaked and skeletal in that gutter puddle. He saw the fierce, protective stance over the fledgling sparrow. He felt the phantom weight of a bony body purring against his heart. Without a word, Leo knelt beside the carrier. He didn't open it. He didn't reach in. He simply sat, his back against the cold metal, level with the kitten's terrified gaze. He began to talk, softly, about the sleet turning to snow outside, about the radiator in the corner that would be warm soon, about a grumpy tabby in the next row who hated the vacuum cleaner. The woman watched, tears silently falling. The shelter manager paused, her expression shifting from concern to something else. Recognition. The broken kitten didn't move, but its panicked panting slowed. Its wide, terrified eyes fixed on Leo's face. Listening. Seeing him. Ghost was waiting by the door when Leo got home that evening. The kitten didn't greet him with meows or leg rubs. It simply sat, its mismatched eyes taking in Leo's expression, the lingering chill of the shelter on his coat, the faint scent of fear and antiseptic clinging to him. It walked to the open fireplace cavity, sat before the unlit white candle, and looked back at Leo. A silent question. Leo knelt beside his small companion. He didn't need to explain. Ghost understood the language of broken things. He reached out, his hand hovering near the kitten's head. Ghost leaned into it, the familiar rumble starting in its chest. Leo looked into the dark cavity, at the candle standing sentinel. "There was a kitten today," he murmured, his voice rough. "Like you were hurt." Ghost's purr deepened, a vibration against Leo's palm. Acknowledgement. Understanding. "I know." Leo lit the candle. A small, steady flame sprang to life in the depths of the brick cavity, casting flickering shadows on the hearthstone. It wasn't for the sparrow. Not this time. It was for the tiny, broken soul at the shelter. For the woman who'd stopped to help. For the long road of healing ahead. For the simple, staggering truth that sometimes the most profound acts of courage begin with a choice to stop, to kneel in the sleet, and bear witness to another's pain. Ghost watched the flame, its blue and gold eyes reflecting the tiny, dancing light. The purr was a continuous, warm thrum, filling the quiet room. Leo placed his hand on the kitten's back, feeling the ridges of its spine, the steady beat of its heart. He thought of the fledgling sparrow taking flight, of the unopened letter, now a closed chapter, of the cold, wet creature he'd carried home, who had become his guardian, his mirror, his unexpected family. He thought of the broken kitten at the shelter, and the fragile thread of hope offered by a quiet voice in the dark. The snow fell silently outside, blanketing the world in soft white. The candle flame burned steady, a small defiance against the long night, a testament to the warmth that could bloom, even in the coldest, most broken places. Not by erasing the scars, but by learning to carry them together, by understanding, deep in the marrow, that the greatest shelter we can offer, or receive, isn't a roof, or a hiding place, but the unwavering presence of another heart, beating beside our own in the dark. Ghost shifted, curling its warm body closer to Leo's leg. The purr softened, a drowsy hum. Leo rested his head against the cool brick beside the candle's glow, his hands still on the small, living warmth of his companion. The world was hushed, waiting, but here, in this small circle of light and warmth, with the steady rhythm of a rescued heartbeat against him, Leo knew something with absolute certainty. The storms would come again. The nights would be long. Scars would ache with the changing seasons. But he would never be lost in the silence again. Not while a small creature with one blue eye and one gold, and a scar like a whispered secret across its nose, chose to share its warmth, its watchful stillness, its stubborn, purring light. The greatest rescue, he understood now, wasn't the one that pulled you from the darkness. It was the one that taught you how to build a fire, right there, in the heart of it. If this story of Ghost and Leo's journey touched your heart, please let us know. Smash that like button, it tells us these stories matter. Subscribe and hit the bell, so you never miss our next tale of hope and healing. Comment below, tell us where in the world you're listening from, and which moment moved you most. Share this video, someone out there might need this light today. Your support turns these whispers of hope into a chorus that reaches hurting hearts everywhere. Thank you for being part of our storytelling family. Until next time, Keep looking for the light in unexpected places.